Yes, I know it's in portrait, but there is a reason, I promise. So I wanted to share with you guys a little project that we did last year, towards the end of last year. And the thing about my job is, so I am employed. So if my boss says to me, you work in 50 string courses, I'm working 50 string courses. If I'm told I'm going to be out for 6 months pointing ashlar, I'm out for 6 months pointing ashlar. So I don't actually get to just pick and choose like pretty little projects to do. And if a really exciting, fun, pretty project comes up, then that's like a one-off, or a lot of the work we do is just one-offs. Like at the moment I'm carving the top of a chimney. I've never done that before, and I probably may never do it again because the chimney on the priory may never fall down again. Well, hopefully it won't, because we're putting a new one up there. But yeah, a lot of the work that we do is very unique and one-off. So a lot of the footage I have over the last 8 years are of these quite unique jobs, and I have a lot of footage. But because I only ever did Instagram, that means a lot of this footage is in portrait. But I still want to share it with you guys, because these are quite unique jobs and things that I will probably not get the chance to do again very soon. So that is why this is in portrait again. So sorry. New jobs will be filmed in landscape. So what I'm going to do in this video is share a load of footage with you of a weird little side quest that we were sent on last year, which had loads of different elements to it. But essentially, we had a new stone source. So the stone that we have been using historically is Lincoln limestone, quarried in the cathedral's own quarry. And that quarry closed a number of years ago. We had a supply of stone, several tons, several dozens of tons, that was to last us for a certain number of jobs. And we've got a fantastic cathedral geologist, lovely Mike, what a legend. He's been out sourcing new stone sources for us. And a quarry in Dunston, just up the road, about 10 miles up the road, have hit a seam of stone that is very similar to the stone that the cathedral was built out of, the Lincoln limestone. So we were given the opportunity, we were sent some blocks from that quarry, and the masons were told to just work this stone, experiment with this stone, see how it feels. Is it similar to the Lincoln limestone that we've been using historically? So we were kind of, for the first time ever, just given a block and told, you've got a week, do something, which is unheard of, because like we have jobs, we have programs of works, we have to work X amount of stones for this project, for this deadline. So it's all very quite like regimented what we have to do. So to be given free rein is like stunning. Now, an extra little thing that adds a bit of a spanner in the works here is we have a big saw. So if we get like a rough block out the ground and it needs kind of sawing, squaring up, or like, yeah, cutting into a manageable chunk that we can actually get in the workshop on our bankers, that saw was out of action. So when this was filmed, the compound that the saw was in was being moved. So the saw was decommissioned, turned off, ready to be moved. So we had a situation where we had these big, rough, scant blocks from a quarry, and we had no mechanical means of splitting them or squaring them or sawing them into sawn 6 blocks, which is really exciting because it meant we had to go a bit old school, and we got to do something that a lot of us have not done since our apprenticeship, and that is boning. Boning in, which means taking the twist out of a block, squaring it up, making a perfectly square, flat-sided block. But before we could do that, we also had to split the stones by hand. So in this video, we're going to be using plug and feathers to split stone by hand, which is how historically kind of Roman, medieval, all the builders of the past, it's how they did it. We're going to be boning in our block, taking out the twist. We're going to be squaring it up all by hand, so no saw to cut it for us, which, like I said, is something that a lot of us haven't done until since our apprenticeship, because that's the first thing you do as an apprentice. Day 1, Stone Masonry school, week 1, day 1, you're going to learn how to split and square a block. So it was quite fun just to get back to basics. We don't often get to do that. And then we were told with our square blocks that we could just like do something, just make something, anything you want. So yeah, I did a carving that I love. So that's what this video is. There's going to be a little bit of talking, a little bit of babbling. So sorry it's in portrait, but anyway, let's bone a block. So we start with our large scanted blocks, our big rocks, straight from the quarry, and in order to get these on our banker we need to split them down by hand into manageable chunks. Right, I'm going to pause it there because when I shared this footage on my Instagram last year, explaining how medieval masons or Roman masons or, you know, very historic masons would split their stone, this was the point at which people had a lot to say about the fact I was using an electric drill, so how could this possibly be historically accurate? This is an electric drill, so it's not historically accurate. This is a Makita 110 hammer drill. But just because this is an electric drill doesn't mean that the Romans and the medieval masons weren't drilling into stones. Drills didn't only come into existence with the invention of electricity. Drills existed way before electricity. We had hand drills, we had bow drills, we even had things called jumper bars, which is what was being used in slate quarries right up to the 19th and early 20th century, which is a way of drilling into solid rock in order to add wedges, or sometimes in the Victorian period dynamite, in order to split rocks. These were being used as recently as 100 years ago, and they were used hundreds and thousands of years ago. So right now we're using an electric drill because we have an electric drill, and it means that will take us about 10 minutes rather than about 10 hours. And I am going to insert a little bit of cheeky footage in here because last year me and my friend went down a Welsh 100-year-old slate mine where they quarried slate out of the mountain, and because it was a historic mine there were old tools down there, and our guide demonstrated one of these jumper bars. So let's have a look.
And then find the hole that they're going for, keep twisting it, bring it out, twist it, and just keep going for it. Once you then get to there, and then flip it up, find the hole again, same process. Blow the candle out and just carry on.
Right, after that little rant about historic drills, let's actually start splitting some stone. So we use what we call plugs and feathers. I have heard other people refer to them as wedges and feathers. But essentially you have your plug or your wedge in the middle, and then you have these two feathers that sit either side. They have a round face and a flat face, so they kind of slot together, they fit together and slide quite neatly into the drilled hole. Then the wedge goes in between the two, and if you do a run of these in a line, this is how you're going to split your stone neatly in a straight line. So let's just sit back and enjoy stone being smashed, because who doesn't enjoy seeing a big bit of stone being split? And also, I quite like the noise these make. They tend to like ring, really satisfying metal ringing sound. Also, once again, expertly demonstrated by Craig. And then eventually we had split our bigger stones down into smaller bite-sized chunks, ready to be distributed onto all of our bankers. So the blocks that we usually work arrive at our yard in what's called sawn 6. So it's sawn on all 6 sides. So they arrive already squared up, already to the right dimensions, just ready to put the templates on. So we don't have to square them up ourselves. These are actually bits of the French stone that are going to make up one of our new pinnacles on the second phase. So this has come all the way from France. We've got loads of pallets full of this stuff. So this was my little stone ready to bone in, to square up and get ready for a little bit of carving practice. But I'm going to talk you all through the process now. Normally our stones would arrive in a sawn 6 kind of form, so it would be already squared off from the saw and it would be to the right dimensions, ready for us to put our templates on. But because we have this little project we need to get done, we're all going to have to bone in our blocks, which is masonry school day 1. Most of us haven't done this since we were at college. I think the last time I had to bone a block or square up a block was maybe 8 years ago, I think. So just briefly, in a nutshell, before I get started, you get a block from the quarry, split like this. we don't have a saw, we can't square it up. So what you do is you sit it on its bed. So this is natural bedded. This is the orientation in which it came out of the ground. So the beds are running this way. This is the way we want it to go in the building, because when it's under compression, that's when it's at its strongest. If we tipped it on its end and the natural beds were running that way, it'd be more likely to like delaminate and crack. So we want to natural bed our stones. So there is an orientation in which they have to go in the building. That might be a little bit different if you're doing like tracery and arches and bourgeois, just because of the compression and the load, but that's a whole different conversation. And I've already put a little pencil line on here because I've kind of eyeballed it off the lowest point. That is the lowest corner, but you cut in some corners, then you take your blocks, and on your flat corners, once you've cut them in, they're a bit wonky at the moment because I haven't cut them in yet, you'll put your blocks on each 4 corners. You'll put straight edges or like parallel boards, or probably in my case spirit levels, because I've got a few, across the blocks, and then you'll eyeball it in. You'll get real down low and you'll eyeball it in, and you'll be able to see from the board behind and the board in front the twist in the stone. So if you can see the one behind, then you know there's a bit of twist. So then you just kind of chip away at each corner until when you eyeball it down, those levels or boards are perfectly kind of level with each other. So once you've cut in all of your corners and put your boards across in both orientations, and you can tell those corners are perfectly level with each other, then you'll run your drafts between each corner using a straight edge to check that it's flat corner to corner. And then you'll have a perfect ring, like a border around the top of your stone that is perfectly level with itself. And then you can just work out the middle the same way you work out a normal flat surface. Then you have one flat surface. From that flat surface, you can get your square, and you can square each side to that. And once you square each side off each other and work them all flat, then you'll have a perfect cube. And once you have a perfect square cube, you can whack your template on and work your component. So there you go, boning in. So now that I have explained the process, I think it's time to actually do the process. And luckily I remembered to time lapse most of it, so let's go through it. Well, you join me here at my banker about to bone in this block, and you can tell this footage was shot well over a year ago because those glasses. But I am just eyeballing in a couple of corners so that I can put the boning blocks on there and place the levels on. Now this is an excellent stopping point to point out to you guys that we are not looking at the levels for the bubble. We are not trying to make the stone level, we're trying to take out the twist. So in order to do that, you can do this with plain wooden boards. I just didn't have any plain wooden boards, but I do have 2 matching levels. So we're not looking at the bubble here, we are looking at that top edge of the black level and the yellow level to make sure they are not twisted, to make sure as you drop down and eyeball them through, they are lined up perfectly with no overlap at either side. And then once I know each of those 4 corners are lined up with each other, I can connect those 4 corners by making what we call a draft. And once the draft between the first 2 corners is perfectly flat, then I can create a draft all the way around, creating a sort of perfectly flat border. And it was at this point that we all downed tools because we were invited round to the Dean's house for donuts. The bi-monthly Dean's Donuts is actually one of the things we look forward to the most. So there you go. Highlight of working at a cathedral, Dean's Donuts. Anyway, donuts aside, back to the stone. So we've got this lumpy bit in the middle. All you have to do is work that middle bit out so that it matches the drafts all the way around and you end up with a flat surface. And now we have one perfectly flat surface. We can draw a line on it and square each of the unworked surfaces off that one face. And then it's a very similar process to the first face that we worked flat, except this time we are squaring our drafts, our border, off that first face, so that these 2 flat faces, face 1 and face 2, are perfectly flat and also square to each other. And just like we did with the first face, once we have our drafts around the edge, it's just a case of connecting them up in the middle by working out that lumpy bit. So we get it down as near as damn it with our claw chisel, and then once the claw has taken out all of the rough stuff and we're as close as we can get, we then go in with our boaster to make it perfectly flat. Now, because this is quite a hard limestone, we can't use any hand saws, and there's very minimal abrasives we can use on it. So we can't really use drags or rasps because it is quite a hard stone. And all of my chisels are tungsten tipped because of that. And the process is just to work side to side between the drafts, checking constantly with the straight edge to make sure that it is perfectly flat. And we work to like millimetre tolerance here, so no daylight can come through that straight edge. And one of the things I always get asked is where I get my chisels from. So my blue claw chisel is from Allure, Stephen Travis, and my black chisels are from JP. JP sadly no longer makes chisels, which I'm absolutely heartbroken about, because as soon as my Boaster and my 1-inch chisel from JP finally die, which they will, because eventually I will wear the tungsten out, I will be heartbroken. But I definitely recommend tungsten tipped chisels from Allure. And there we have our second face, perfectly flat and perfectly square to the first face. So we just have to keep repeating this process basically. So having 2 flat sides does make it slightly easier to do the third one, because we have 2 perfectly flat faces to scribe lines on. So the more sides that you work, the easier each subsequent side becomes. And because I know people are going to ask, where I've written TB on one of the faces, that actually stands for top bed. Like I said at the beginning, we have to keep our eye on the bedding planes of the stone. We have to know which orientation to put it in the building, because it has to go in the building natural bedded. So we always mark on where the top bed is, so we can keep an eye on which way round the stone needs to be placed, and also which way round we need to place our template. And then wouldn't you know it, we have to repeat the process on every single side. I'm using a punch here to take out some of the bigger chunks of stone, using a 1-inch flat chisel to cut in my drafts. I'll then use the claw and the Boaster to make it perfectly flat. And then eventually we will have a perfect cube, or sort of cube-ish, but it will be completely square and completely flat on every single face. Now it is ready to apply a template or to draw on a design in order to make a component for the building. Although, as I mentioned in the introduction, because this was a test piece, because this is a new type of stone that we're trialling, we were all given a block each and told to just try something out and have fun, and that literally never happens. I think in the 8 years that I've been at Lincoln Cathedral, I've never just been handed a rock and told to do anything I want, because we're always working a component for the building. So I was super excited to have a go at replicating one of the Romanesque beak heads from the west front door at Lincoln Cathedral, and here they are. Look at them. This is our great west door, and it is completely decorated with these gorgeous Romanesque beak heads. So I did a little sketch, drew it on my stone, and carved away. So there is a masonry element to this carving. So those round bits, the sort of barrel, because technically this is supposed to sit one on top of the other and create a sort of roll mould with a carved face. So I've worked the masonry element first with those chamfers and that roll, and then left the carving block proud. So now I can carve the face into that block. And as demonstrated in previous carving videos where I've been carving crockets recently, it's a constant process of sketching it on, roughing it out, using smaller clawed chisels to rough out some of the big stuff, and you're constantly drawing on the line and then working off the line and then drawing the line back on, and just really eyeballing in where all of the components need to be, starting from the highest points and then pushing the stone down away from those high points. And also, as I've mentioned on previous videos about decorative carving, I am not technically a decorative carver. I am a stonemason. These can be 2 separate jobs. Some people are masons and decorative carvers. Some people are carvers, sculptors, artists. Some people are masons and they carve purely the masonry elements that go together, the building blocks that make the buildings. So we're here at Cathedral World, we're very lucky that we are given the opportunity to do the masonry components, the building blocks, but also the more free-flowing decorative carving. So this was the first time I'd ever carved a beak head before, so it was just a lot of finagling and a lot of finessing, but I really enjoyed it. I think Romanesque is one of my favourite styles. And people do often ask me why I'm wearing ear defenders in a quiet workshop where we don't have any noisy equipment going, and that's because they're Bluetooth and I am an Audible addict. I'm averaging about 70 to 80 audiobooks a year currently, so I'm always up for book recommendations. I am currently working through all of Terry Pratchett's Discworld. I've read it all through once before, and now I'm doing it all in audiobook form again, and I'm thoroughly loving it. So I'm using some claw chisels to do a lot of the roughing out, and then the smoother, flatter chisels for the final face. A lot of bull noses, a lot of fishtails. And I'm also using my metal dummy. I've got a brass one and a steel one. So these are traditional carving dummies. I then decided halfway through that I wanted to change the design of the tongue. You might have noticed that the beak heads on the west front have all got completely different tongues. And so I thought rather than copy one that's there, I'd kind of create one of my own. Went a little bit off-piste here, but we don't often get to do this, so this was quite exciting. So a question that I also get asked quite a lot is all about injuries in my hands and wrists. So people ask if I ever hit my fingers or hit my thumb. I mean, it happens when you're training. You're going to hit your thumb a few times, but hopefully the more experience you get, the less likely that is to happen. And people ask if we are prone to getting things like carpal tunnel or repetitive strain. I personally don't suffer with that. I don't actually know any masons that suffer with that. I mean, there may be some out there. Someone will probably correct me and say that they suffer with that as a mason, but I don't know any, and I don't. You kind of let the weight of the hammer do the work for you. You're not just constantly flexing your wrist. You're kind of like lifting and dropping, or almost holding it in quite a loose grip and just using your little finger to like pivot the dummy to get those lighter taps. I don't know if that's the best way to explain it, but you're kind of minimizing a lot of pressure on your joints in your technique, really. Another comment or question or query that I seem to get quite a lot on this channel is, why are my hands so nice? Why are my nails so nice? I'm obviously not working very hard because I have very nice nails. I don't know whose hands you're looking at. They're not. My nails are a mess, guys. I don't get my nails done. I don't even have to trim my nails because they just get permanently broken from my job. My hands are not great. So, I mean, I do use hand moisturizer. We all moisturize. We even have a big tub of hand cream in our workshop, and everyone uses hand cream every day because we're working with limestone, and limestone dust is notorious for drying out your skin. So moisturizing is key, guys. Moisturizing is cool. Go for it. But yeah, my nails are not that nice. I don't take care of them. And I work in an environment that is not necessarily conducive to having fancy long nails, so I'm just never going to have that, and that is fine. So as we're getting dangerously close to having a finished carving here, it's at this point that I should point out, we don't rub our stones, we don't polish them or sand them or leave like a rubbed finish. We try and leave our stones off the chisel as much as possible. You might have noticed in this I've got a few little rifflers, kind of little tiny pointy files that I can use to just get into a few corners to finagle a few bits out. But essentially we're trying to leave this off the chisel, which is how the medieval masons would have done it, and you can get a pretty smooth finish just with a hammer and chisel. You don't necessarily need to rub them up. And just like that, hey presto, the beak head is finished. I named this guy Captain Beaky, and I believe we gave him to the cathedral geologist as a gift in the end. And you know what? I loved him, and I might carve another one for my house one day. I'm sorry that the editing in that was a little bit sort of janky, but I am just working with the footage that I had at the time. I never filmed any of that with YouTube in mind. I filmed it to just post things on Instagram. So I think I managed to stitch it together in a bit of a coherent fashion. Hopefully it made sense. That was kind of Stone Masonry 101. Now you all know how to square a block. Just a couple of things. It's Installer Show in June. I think it's the 3rd week of June. I want to say 22nd, 23rd, something like that. So 3rd week of June, it is the Installer Show. I'm going to be there on the heritage stage. They have like a heritage zone. So there's going to be some like hotline workers, plasterers, some stone dressers, and then I'm there with a banker, with a block of stone, carving a crocket. So if you want to see me carving a crocket, I think I'm doing it on the Wednesday of Installer. I will put a link in the description of this video where you can get free tickets. So if you click on my link, you can get free tickets for Installer Show. It's just a big trade show, lots of plumbers and electricians and carpenters and normal commercial trades, and then just like us heritage nerds at the back. I believe Super Trowel, the bricklaying competition, are going to have one of their regional heats there this year, which is really exciting. And if you have any burning questions, as always, leave them in the comments. I do actually try and reply to all of them. I do try and get back to you guys. And I am making a list of suggestions because a lot of people ask very specific questions and for very specific videos. So I've got a bit of a hit list of things that I'm going to film for you guys to try and answer a few of your most asked questions. And as always, if you would like to like and subscribe, I would be super duper grateful. I do appreciate it. This is all a bit new and exciting for me. Anyway, it's Friday, it's sunny, it's 7:15 in the morning, so I should probably go to work.